What is going on, YouTube? This is Jim back with another video, and today we're doing a first look at Warhammer Vermintide 2. Now, this was launched today on both Steam and on Xbox Game Pass, and that's where I picked it up. So if you are an Xbox Game Pass subscriber like I am, you could pick this game up for free. Now, I played the first Vermintide, and I really did enjoy it. Vermintide 2, from what I have seen so far, has some pretty significant improvements over the first. So, if you're familiar with the first one and you liked it, I think trying out the second one is a no-brainer. But if you're like most people and you've never heard of Vermintide at all, well, you came to the right place, because I'm going to go over a little bit with you while we watch some gameplay together that I recorded earlier. So I pulled this off of Mixer, so if there's any little weird hiccups or bumps, it is coming from Mixer. I didn't use my Elgato or anything like that. But quality's pretty good, and I think it'll give you a pretty good feeling for what the game is about. Now, the game is a first-person combat game. There are 5 different heroes to select from. You have a mage, you have a knight, you have a dwarf who's like a tank. You have just an assorted group of people, like a roguelike character, an archer. You can kind of pick who you want, and what you do is you queue up for a mission with your character. The game will put you in an instance with 3 other people, so you guys can play together. Now, I am playing with this wizard character, and I don't understand what I'm doing. The game, because this is just the first time I was playing it, what the game does is it's a lot of resource management, and it's a lot of kind of fighting lane management. So if you're familiar with Diablo, or you're familiar with any game where you're fighting the horde or any kind of large group of enemies, then you know that you don't want to get caught out to dry, and you don't want to overextend yourself and use all your resources or your whatever system you have to attacking too quickly. So in this case, every time I cast a magic spell, and this is when I realize it when I see the red skull on my screen, every time you cast a magic spell with this character, she becomes more and more on fire. You see my left hand actually starting to get on fire, and I didn't realize this at the time, but you have to let it stop. I thought that bar in the center was giving me more power. It was my meter. When it goes all the way off, I will actually self-detonate, and I have to be revived. All the characters have some sort of resource like that, whether it's arrows or energy or what have you. You have to be mindful of that. Luckily, you have a melee weapon, which you can spam pretty much infinitely. There's no stamina there. The big thing is you don't want to get caught out to dry. So, what this game is about is the Vermintide, and it's a sequel to the first one, but if you didn't play the first one, that's okay. You don't necessarily have to understand the first one. It helps because the characters are the same. There's a lot of, I wouldn't say flashbacks to the first game, but there's a lot of discussion of things they've done before, because in the first game, you fight the Vermintide, which is just basically this rat plague. You're successful, of course, you save the day. Game number 2 picks up with all the heroes in jail, and actually the tutorial level, it's a great level of walking you through and recollecting kind of the team, going through the catacombs and working your way up and out back into the world, only to realize that all the hard work you've done has been overridden by, the return of the plague. So this game handles a lot like Skyrim, where it's this first-person combat. It's not the best. I'm not going to say it's as clunky as Skyrim, but don't expect, really over the advanced controls here. There's not really a lot of different things you can do. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of stuff you can interact with in the environment. So you can't break barrels to find treasures. You can't knock enemies through through railings, or throw tables or chairs at them. This isn't that kind of game. Most of the environment is static, with the exception of things that light up that have a outline around them. Those are potions you can pick up, or explosive barrels you can set, or grenades, or I think they call them bombs in this game. But items you can interact with. Those are very clearly displayed for you to see. Everything else is just static, and that's kind of a disappointment because the game is really beautiful and it does such a great job of not really even supporting true HDR, but it does a really great job of distinguishing color sets, particularly when you're inside of a keep or inside of a dungeon. You really start to get the effect of how dark the darks are and how hard it is to see. And, you know, only like lanterns, and particularly with the wizard, with these flame attacks, when enemies are on fire, do they really illuminate the area. And it's so pretty. They did such a great job with it, and it's frustrating that they couldn't have extended that more into the environment. I assume it was some sort of resource limitation that they had, but it would have been really nice to be able to interact more and to interact with the enemies more, because you're really limited to just a few attacks. You can attack with your melee weapon, you can block, you can push an enemy back just to give yourself a little bit of distance. You have an escape, which for me is that skull that you can see it's active on my bottom right screen there, or the bottom right corner of the screen. For the wizard, it's like a teleport. It just teleports you like 15 feet in any direction, and then like it sets flames behind you, so enemies, if they try to follow you, they get hurt. And then you have your ranged attack, and that's really the limitation of your attacks. Now, the cool thing is, I have to say, the animations and stuff, even though they are somewhat static, I think they're done very, not static, repetitive. They're done very well. And, you know, as you're cleaving through hordes of enemies, and you just saw a little bit of one there, you'll see another pretty big fight coming up here in a minute. You know, enemies, you lop their limbs off. Sometimes they just flat out die. Sometimes you cut their head off. They bleed out. They catch on fire, and they run around on fire for a few seconds and spread the fire on and die. They do have some very distinct animations, and it does feel very fresh. So for that, I'm thankful. But even though there's really not a lot of combat moves per se, you know, I feel like there is enough variety in the combat, at least the way it looks, where when I was playing, I didn't feel like it was overly, you know, repetitive. And there are different enemies, like certain enemies that have a shield that you have to sneak around and hit them from the back, or enemies that are only vulnerable during certain frames of animation, or that you have to kite into a certain part of an area where they can only be attacked within a certain zone, or like charging an enemy so they get stuck in a wall and you run around the back. When there is a lot of distinction there. It isn't just mindless waves of rats that come at you. But I like it because each little dungeon that you go through, they're pretty lengthy. They take about 40 or 45 minutes each. It's a pretty good chunk, and you do get to see a lot of different locations. In this one, you know, as you're working your way through this temple, you're working your way through part of the city, then you're working your way through a castle, then you're inside a church, fighting through the church. Then a big enemy comes and the church explodes. You have to jump out, and you're fighting through like the back alleys, working your way through, you know, very distinct areas that really do feel different, and it is nice. Now, there isn't a lot of lore or anything per se to pick up. There's not books to read. The characters do have a lot of small talk between each other, which is nice. Sometimes it is overly sarcastic, like, look, these stairs actually go up, like when you get lost and you don't know where to go. But you get a feeling that these heroes have a camaraderie amongst them, and the scripted lines that they say to each other, it is kind of funny. Of course, if you're playing with your friends, you would probably not care too much about that, and you would have your own scripted lines, like I did. In this particular game, none of my Xbox One friends were on. I was just playing with some random players, but we didn't have voice chatter on or anything. We were just kind of all figuring it out. And, you know, a lot of people new to the game don't even really know what we're doing. We're just kind of spamming attacks and not very coordinated, but I think that's part of the hijinks and part of the fun. So here's a part where you're going to get to see where a monstrous wave appears. So what you're going to try to do is, you know, we're inside this castle, kind of this arena area, and we're going to open the door. And until the gate actually opens, it actually alarms the enemies. And a big part of the rat plague, the Vermintide, begin to pour out with their zombie friends and some of these knights and everything. And you'll just get a feel for just how frantic some of the chaos really is and how crazy it is. We're not coordinated at all, like I said. Everybody's running around wildly, attacking in different directions. We don't have any focused fire. But you can start to see in the background, everybody's really deeply engaged in their piece of the battle. I'm running around like a madman, swinging, shooting fire when I can. It was very, very intense and frantic, but a lot of fun. And you really feel like a badass as you're just cleaving through wave after wave of these enemies and really starting to fight through and, carve your way back out. This is where I actually get caught in this poison tornado that an enemy threw. I thought this was a really cool effect. It just kind of whips you around and then it throws you out, but then you get poisoned, so I have to take a little healing break there and get back into combat. So this is kind of the gameplay in a nutshell. You go on these quests. Each of the quests have objectives, so it might be like kill 100 enemies with a sword or light 10 enemies on fire. Every time you complete the mission, you get a chest. The chest will contain loot in it. Depending on the number of things that you've done, if there's a lot of objectives that you completed, or let's say you were the one who did the most damage, or you were the guy who died the least, or you had the most kills, or whatever it happens to be, all these modifiers, even those objectives I mentioned before, like kill 10 enemies with a sword or whatever, will increase. If you complete those, every time you do that, it will increase the rarity of the chest. So the chest is like a very basic item inside. But if you complete 3 or 4 quests, it increases and then you open it. So you kind of like beating it is part of it. You're gonna, if you just grind it out, you eventually will get items. But if you want the high quality items, there definitely is an incentive to playing it more strategically. And that's where I really feel like if you're playing with some friends, I think you'd really have a good time with it, because you'd really be able to, like do those good things, like beat a mission without anybody dying, or stuff like that. You know what I mean? It wouldn't be this pandemonium that you're seeing here. So at the end of the level, you cash out your chest, whether it's the best chest in the game or, just maybe more of a basic level chest. You get some items, and you can upgrade and equip your character in different ways, and then suit up in this town, change out your gear, and then go back into war and requeue for another instance and continue the fight. That's really the kind of the gameplay hook. When you're in town and doing the crafting, you could change the way what weapon you have. So like for me, by default, my melee weapon, you saw I have a sword. After I beat this mission, which I don't think I'll go long enough in the video for you guys to see, but after I beat this mission, I'll unlock a mace. So now if I want to use a mace instead, that I can. Well, the sword and the mace have different advantages. A sword is a very fast weapon with single single target damage, unless you do the heavy attack to hit more than one enemy. As where the mace does damage over time. And it's a lot slower. You swing, and then everybody has this like bleeding damage effect. So there's trade-offs, and you would have to coordinate and figure out what weapon is best for what environment, or what role you're going to play in the game. Obviously matters too. Each character has different classes, which can be upgraded to different classes, which have different abilities, pros and cons. Each of those have different perks, like your fire does more damage, or it utilizes less mana, or an enemy caught on fire takes 20% more damage, things like that. So there's a lot of distinction in between the classes. So once you find something that you're good at, that you enjoy playing, that's fun, you could begin to upgrade and tailor that class to your liking. Now, I just picked this mage at first. I did like her. I think I'll play through everyone before I lock down. But, the mage, obviously with this fire, I like the range stuff. I think that's fun. I don't want to get hit. I like standing in the back and, getting some really cool shots. But, upgrading this into different abilities and, eventually morphing it into a totally different class that, maybe instead of using flames, maybe uses magical guns. I've seen that as a class. I'm not sure which character that is. That might be for the archer. But stuff like that, it's like, oh, that's cool. So you do have objectives to strive towards. So, even if this does feel somewhat grindy, which to me, I didn't feel that way playing through this. I wasn't like, oh, this is really boring. I was having a lot of fun running around and, fighting all the different enemies and going into the different rooms. And, I enjoyed it. But I feel like if you ever feel like you're in that kind of rut where it's like, oh, it's not this again kind of thing, I would say keep in mind that, you are working towards a goal to customize your character, to get the better equipment, to get the cooler looking vanity items, that sort of thing. And that's really the game in a nutshell. If I had to rate it now, I really enjoy it. I would have to say it's at least an 8 out of 10. maybe higher. There's, it's not a perfect game by any stretch of the imagination. Some of the animations are a little clunkier. Again, the lack of environmental damage, I think, isn't that great. It's something that I wish that they could have improved on. But just the way your character moves, controls, the environment, the ambiance, it's really there, and it really was enjoyable. When you do get into those enemies, big fights like there, where I just smoked that rat and he just turned into ash, that's really, really satisfying. And when you're fighting waves of enemies and you kind of band together as a team, whether it's planned or organically, like in this case, it is really a lot of fun to have a bunch of people to work together, and it is cool to just be this overwhelming odds, kind of shoulder to shoulder with some heroes and fight your way through the battle. I did enjoy that quite a bit, and that is definitely a hook for me. So if you are a fan of Skyrim, if you are a fan of RPGs, if you're a fan of Diablo, I think you would appreciate this game, and I think you would enjoy it. I hope my explanation and kind of walkthrough did this game justice. It just came out. I haven't really seen any critical reviews on it yet, but from somebody who does really enjoy Xbox Game Pass as a service, when the new games come out, if there's something that are really worth talking, it's something that I would bring up. But I'll tell you guys before I go, I love Vermintide so much that I was planning on buying this game, whether or not it was part of Game Pass, and it was announced today that it was, which is awesome. The best game service on the planet, in my opinion, gets better. But I was totally planning on buying this anyway. This is something that I really, really enjoyed the first one. And this does seem like it has enough significant improvements and enough frantic combat that will keep me entertained for quite some time as I slowly pick a character and a hero that I really enjoy playing with and working them up and making them stronger and going on those difficult quests, taking on those hard challenges. Each level that you load up, it gives you an idea of, like, do you want it to do on easy? Do you want to do it on hard? Do you want enemies to be modified? And that also modifies that chest at the end too. So once you get a team together and you kind of start understanding how to play, you get a little bit stronger. You're definitely going to want to go back, and you're going to want to, fight through some of those challenges and, get the better stuff. And that, I think, in that sense, the replayability in this game is very, very high. So the name of the game, Vermintide 2. Actually, I think it's Warhammer Vermintide 2, technically. Highly recommend you check it out. I think you would enjoy it. Hope you guys enjoyed my first look at it. I'll be back probably sometime later, a couple weeks or so, to give you guys an update. I'll probably do another a Mixer video like this, so you could see some of the status of my character and the progress I've made. And hopefully it inspires you guys to check this one out, because I think you will enjoy it. There you guys have it. Leave a comment below. Let me know if you guys played the first Vermintide or the second Vermintide. If you're even interested in a fan of the Warhammer universe, if this is something that appeals to you. I love reading your comments. I do reply to each and every single one of them. Getting close to 1,000 subs. Very, very exciting time. I appreciate all the support you guys have given me. And with that, I will let you guys go. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.